Hi, welcome to another episode of Simply Stated with Deborah. And today's episode will be live Sunday afternoon here in the USA up in northern Michigan. So I hope you're enjoying yourselves. We have two different topics to go through. This may be the last live episode that I do for a while. I thought it'd be fun to do some live episodes, but changing weather and schedules, like I don't know that I'll actually keep doing live episodes, even though I know people really enjoy them. There's something I try to do around like sort of holiday events if possible. Um, anyways, but today's show is going to be about a few different topics. If you see around the end, I'm probably going to sing Princess Purple Rain just for fun. I'm going to karaoke it. So it's not a show you're going to want to miss. Um, and let's just go through, a few basic kind of topics. I think the big thing right now from this last week is that you understood all my stories from the past with our project and simply stated the U.S. Department of Education, like ignoring the rules around FAFSA and all the CPS reports, because that's the big thing about the Department of Education, and then also financial aid. Like for example, when I was at Georgetown, they were charging double or like almost in the amount, and then a third for actual credits to me, even though I was on financial aid. So they were ripping off the U.S. government and then me as well as a customer. And then you look at like all the reports going back through Table Mound, elementary school in Iowa, CPS, all of that, and they just ignored all of that. Did nothing about the problems with the schools. And then, of course, you have the issues at Luther College in Iowa that they never addressed. And then, of course, you have like Marymount University, and you also have the problems at Georgetown with the nursing programs, particularly being full of people that were assets for China and Russia. And there was just the object abusive behavior at Georgetown University, which caused me to leave the nursing program. And of course, throughout all of this, there's this bizarre, like, activist harassment that's gone on that makes no sense with people talking about lawsuits and trying to control the system and how everyone's going to do everything, and it's just completely pointless because you can't dictate, how the U.S. government or law enforcement is going to handle those situations. The point being that when I confronted the Department of Education on several different instances throughout my life, over a plus 30-year period, they told me they didn't have the power to do anything about what was happening. Well, if the Department of Education can't do anything except dispense money and incorrectly to organizations that are not really good educational institutions that strictly support Russia and China, then what do I need you for? Because, being forced to sleep with people or work for the money myself or both or some combination thereof in order to go to school and then to be harassed for it, which is also more abuse than labor trafficking, which is what's going on in the schools and the Department of Education is allowing, is a form of egregious abuse, an exact reason for getting rid of the entire Department of Education. So, um, I tried multiple schools, and the only thing I could do for myself, because I told you how Kendrick threatened me at Luther College and said I wasn't allowed to get a degree in the sciences, and I finally got an associate's in the sciences, but I was never allowed to finish because of his contacts in the U.S. government otherwise, getting an actual nursing degree or even to become a medical assistant. And I just simply don't have the money to keep hanging out and trying to go to schools where people want to have fights. And by the way, Governor Glenn Youngkin out of Virginia went on TV this week to ask for money. He said if the Department of Education was being canceled, he wanted money. I've never seen a guy who looked more like a dumb gangster from Trendayaragua or part of the Russian FSB. And the fact that I had other contacts and Axel even said that he thought he was part of the Russian FSB makes me think that just what is he even doing on TV asking for money when it was under his tenure that, I lost my condominium and then I tried to go to school. And obviously, Georgetown is in DC, but Marymount's in Virginia. And then I tried going to PVCC and the gangs were just totally overrunning Charlottesville. And there was all these weird shootings as a result of Endeavor. I'm just looking this up because they were directly tied to Endeavor and Russian FSB activity in what's also known as Trinidad. So he's been the governor of Virginia since 2022. Yeah, I mean, it was during his time, at least as governor, that I had problems at PVCC. And a bunch of us that have not been able to complete our nursing program because of literally one of the guys who was in Trinidad. Buffalo Bill came down there and messed up the entire program. And then there were all these other activists running around trying to get me and other people to just leave the area. And I ended up eventually just going and living in my car for a while with my dog and then moving to Michigan. Like, the state of Virginia went completely nuts under Glenn Youngkin. I wouldn't give him money for anything. I wouldn't even bother with him. I'd be like, this guy needs to go. Like, elect somebody else. I can at least say of Governor Whitmer up here in Michigan that she's done a pretty safe job of keeping the state safe, even with territorial conflicts in certain counties, like what I've described. I mean, I've moved further north in the state, and certainly the county I'm living in is much better run than another one I started out in. But even that one that had problems couldn't get away with as much because Whitmer is actually a good governor. You know, it's something to just say today. But anyway, so I think it's just really important to note that, you know, no one should be surprised at the governor's ability to be successful here in Michigan versus Glenn Youngkin's failures. I think it's pretty clearly tied to not political parties, but to their systemic relationships, unfortunately, to what are basically corrupt organizations that don't belong in the U.S. And then, you know, in contrast to that, and at the same time, paralleling all this, you have to look at the work of DHS, which is currently under Kristi Noem, which is currently, they decided to dissolve the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties within Border Patrol because, and that was an office that Bill Clinton created. So one of the crazy things about President Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton, on top of all the Russian stuff and the weird penalizations of people with Serbian and Croatian contacts, and the bizarre uplifting of Albania, which gave us JLo and then like Fatina, and all these red riots here in the U.S., is that, you know, here's the reality. Like, for example, Luther College, there was one I knew who was Croatian, who was very nice and was very informed, and one of the other guys literally, along with like Blanca, who became JLo, turned her in, and she ended up being deported back to Croatia. And she's someone who should have been supported and kept in the U.S., at least have been allowed to finish her degree, and she ended up having to leave altogether. And that was due to Clinton's support of Albanian terrorist activity in the U.S. in support of Russia, and gang activity that led also to Tren de Aragua. So I don't want you to look at everything and think, you know, this stuff is just, like, it doesn't have a timeline or a genesis. It does. And it's important to remember that, you know, because I was stuck dealing with Cersei and Wilhelm, I spent time studying them, and there was a constant use of guerrilla technology, which is where they send out stimuli. And it's something they were used to doing. I mean, it's really scary stuff, but Cersei and Wilhelm said they were used to doing this. They were both scientists, that they would stimuli people to act poorly and to behave more like guerrilla troops. Not guerrilla, Gorilla, but guerrilla, Guerrilla, which meaning troops and people that would act more primitively to serve them. And it's actually really painful technology when it's deployed for the rest of us. And I think a lot of them are also drug dealers and cartels and terrorist organizations. Tren de Aragua uses it, Al Jalisco uses it, you know, it's from Russian FSB. I think a lot of it's used on the rest of us to just get us to become drug addicts. So you have to think about what you want to do with your day and your life to make yourself happy, because you can't spend all your time, you know, pampering or even catering to that kind of behavior. So it's just really important. You know, for me to make that point. Because here's the thing about the Department of Education that really worried me. I went by there years ago and saw a group of people who were Department of Education employees, and one of them was crawling up the side of a building and then hanging upside down and fell off of it. And I went back to a bunch of researchers. This was during the Bush years when he was growing the organization, and President George W. Bush grew the Department of Education. He failed to make cuts, or lied and said he made cuts, and he grew everything to make sense. He grew gangs, he grew the Department of Education, he grew USAID, and he brought in every weird corrupt cartel member you could imagine from South America and Central America to take government jobs. The rest of us were literally starving and being abused, and had helicopters like flying around the city attacking people that were supposed to be deployed by this government and turned out to actually be from Moose and Hamilton. It was just totally bizarre. And they were attacking innocent citizens. So, and telling people they had to be trafficked. I mean, I told you about how when I first got down to DC, there were all these people that were actually working as slaves for free, and I had my own experiences with government employees trying to traffic me that were corrupt. So, you know, cut them. I mean, as far as the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, that would be the office that, you know, as opposed to protecting the rights of somebody who had immigrated here and was following the laws, they supported, or would have supported, because the office wasn't actually in existence under Clinton. It was moved into it with Border Patrol, which is really weird because nobody bothered to scrutinize it when DHS was created. They just moved it right in there. But so as part of Border Patrol under just to give you the history, and was never examined and was literally just rolled into DHS and should have been gotten rid of when the agency was formed. But I told you about the problems with the agency even getting built, right? So, anyways, so cutting it now would make a lot of sense. And frankly, even looking at judges, you have all these judges that want to put contradicting orders out. The reality is, like, Freddie Klein went to court and was cleared by one judge and the whole process had to be done again, and he was finally sent to prison. So he had a clear-cut case. In fact, that judge even seemed to want to clear him literally because I and other people submitted testimony that he had us raped and beaten. So he was clearly an activist judge who was in favor of U.S. citizens being raped, and in fact in favor of the cartels and terrorist groups that wanted Freddie cleared and not actually put in prison. So it's important to know that, because there were more than enough of us in the GOP who had known him who wanted to, it's like, yeah, dude has to go to prison. And it was just an incredibly long struggle. So, you're going to get judges that are going to push back on what has to be done. But the reality is that what happened with the Department of Education, I don't want to get too far off, is that you think it would be a place that was full of like these young or middle-aged or even older women or men who were really caring and sensitive about education. Instead, it became a place where all these strange guerrillas, as in people who responded to that technology, were placed, who were incredibly hostile and mean, did not care about CPS reports, did not care about FOFSA, did not care about civil rights. And then employees who were literally just told that they couldn't do anything to help anyone. And I'm not even a little bit tired of it, but I don't have energy for it. I don't think anyone really would. I gave up on the Department of Education a really long time ago, back in the 2000s, when I saw how they were doing everything. So it's just kind of important to know that was an issue. And it's kind of important to know that, they didn't do anything about the fact that Georgetown got those financial aid amounts wrong. Like, they just didn't care at all. And I certainly wasn't impressed with their behavior when talking to them. I put a huge financial package together for them of research, did all this work that a U.S. government employee should have done. They just took it and sat on it. And no one ever paid me or compensated me for all the work I did. So I was basically doing these investigations for free to these schools. And it's like, well, what do you need a Department of Education for if individual private citizens are having to do the work? You don't. And they clearly had expected to just hang out with jobs and collect their big salaries and do nothing, So I don't particularly feel sorry for them. I myself had let go of my condominium and my furniture. I've given up my 2 dogs. One passed away and the other one I rehomed. Like, I don't have sympathy for them. And I don't know why anyone would. So, you can't just hang out in a job and not do the work. It's important to know that Blanca / JLo said back in the 2000s, early 2000s, when I knew her, like over 20 years ago, that it was the Department of Education that was specifically giving her a pass to act out and act poorly. So that's really, really important to know. I just want to make sure you understand that. And then, as far as the rest of the situation goes, I'm looking at the cuts and I'm just saying there's no reason for anyone to sympathize or even look at any kind of bizarre obfuscation as far as the news on whether or not they need to be fired. George W. Bush had no business growing the government like that. Neither did Bill Clinton, frankly. And then Obama figured out that there would be other people who would be elected after him and decided to just sit on all of it. And he went in a different direction of not growing things so much. But of course, you saw the Vice President Biden, who wasn't much of a sport, and then became president, which was terrible. And then, of course, Kamala Harris had to literally, try and carry his administration, which is just totally ridiculous. So, anyways, I just want to make sure to cover those points. And let's see. Right now, I also noticed that Chase Bank of America, Wells Fargo are going through closures. Those are all banks that have done a lot of Russian banking, and so getting them closed is actually really key. I know they're not going out of business entirely; they're actually coming down, but it's important to. Oh, hi Heather. I see your little note there. It says hello. For Heifer, what is that? Oh, Healer_life. Sorry. Hi. How are you? So it's just important to know that. We don't, remember the story I told you about my mom, how she had her own fudge company and it got stolen from her and the U.S. government had to go and close that? I would have doubt for a minute that, with Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, that they were all taken over by Russian entities, or worse, found the same kind of people as my mom, and then were just taken. Because that's, and I had a couple different companies that I had worked on founding that were taken from me and will eventually be closed as a result. And Friendly, you're going to end up finding out that Endeavor is one of those eventually. That's really what's going on. And then I have to go through this. I mean, I think one thing I wasn't sure I totally made clear was when I was dealing with Buffalo Bill, he kept saying that it was his job to mess everything up that I did. And so I think the way to put it maybe is just that he was just this really mean, stupid idiot who basically wanted to destroy all my work and my life work. And so I ended up getting out of the entertainment industry altogether because I was only being trafficked as a result of his behavior and what was the presence of the cartels and the terrorist groups within it. It just became completely useless for me to try to work in because they don't pay people. Then you look at if you're not Russian, he wouldn't pay you, and he'd take all your work and mess it up anyways because he didn't want good quality work to go out to the U.S. citizens. Anyways, so there's this bizarre, perverse incentive process there. Like you look at the new Still White, and it's just bad and laughable. And I looked and I said, well, obviously they didn't pay the people who are working on it. Obviously they decided to traffic a bunch of people in the process of producing it. So that's why it's not turning out to be a good movie production. And the fact that the people involved are so dysfunctional and mean and violent oftentimes is a lot of it too, because they don't actually care about producing a good product. So, to review, the Department of Education was filled with people who were fairly violent and dangerous and didn't care about children's lives and respond really well to guerrilla technology. This scariness of people coming over from Russia and China and just literally deploying that to create militias here is something to be aware of and be scared of. It's pretty obvious when someone's engaged in that kind of behavior, but still. And then I noticed also that Accenture is actually not doing very well. They've had a decrease of 7.3% in their shares. I did not particularly think Accenture was good. I felt like they were not on my side in a lot of cases and seemed to be trying to Accenture wanted to accentuate problems for U.S. citizens in order to try to get themselves paid. And it was so weird. I started to think they were no different than Booz and Hamilton. Booz and Hamilton, like it's the same company. Not quite as severe, but they definitely didn't seem to really be trying to help anyone solve their issues or get moving forward as far as I could tell. And I know last night, I was literally talking to a woman at the Macy's here was closing, which is kind of sad, But I said to her, she said she thought everything was going online. I said, no, I think it's all actually that, everyone's downsizing and cutting back. We just don't have as much money as we used to. And also it's important to note that, it could be the same as the banks. I remember basically that Macy's was a company that turned out to be originally with the U.S. and then it was taken over by Russia and China as a company. And then so now their whole relationship to the company and cost and everything that goes with it, I don't think it's needed. It's kind of a dinosaur as far as organizations. But I still went by and said goodbye to the local one here to close. It's like the end of an era, But I think there's nothing but positive about the downsizing happening in the U.S. and cutting because I saw how horrible things were. I mean, when I think of Macy's, I think of the fact that I was being severely abused and that was seriously his favorite store to have me go to pick out clothing. I don't want to shop at it for anything. First of all, it's too expensive, but also, and I liked it to a certain degree because it was a place where I got clothing, but it was clothing at a cost of having been beaten and raped and violently abused and not knowing my future. And I couldn't go to medical school because of this, and I couldn't do nursing school because of this. So I don't think I'm going to miss Macy's. Saying goodbye to any of the locations because there's going to be less. There'll still be some around, I think, for a while while the company reconfigures itself, but it's kind of important to know that it may not really be. I don't think it's a loss, just a change. So, but getting rid of old Clinton organizations that were racist and prejudiced against the lives of children and even the elderly in the U.S., that's important. Yeah. I know that the Department of Education was actually interfering on immigration issues and trying to keep people here on student visas that don't belong in the country. Jayla doesn't belong here at all. By the way, I should tell you really funny. She was actually performing in Abu Dhabi this last week, and I went in her YouTube feed and I said, that's terrible. And one of her supporters got really mad at me and said, nobody asked you? And I said, well, no one would. And I had to laugh. And some other guy got on there and literally, liked my comments. So, I mean, in another era, I would have literally been beat up for doing that because that's how crazier people were. It sucks that we have to wait till 2024 for any of these changes, but that's the reality. And Also, there's some strange woman on Team Z pretending to be a child bride victim who's friends with Chrissy Teigen. How rude. I don't understand that story at all, and I don't really know her, but I just looked at the situation and thought she might be someone who's incredibly. Like, are they just trolling me and everyone else, or is this just like stupidity? Because I know there was a considerably serious issue with people wanting to know what had gone on in my life and then wanting to use it for material, and it was just insulting and saying that they wanted to be me, and I don't really want someone wanting it to be me. That's just totally weird. And if this doesn't make any sense, that's the point. It was all just a lot of abusive labor trafficking, weird behavior, and taking other people's life experiences and stories, and then trying to act them out in such a way that it just doesn't make any sense. Um, let's see. I don't understand this. Hold on. There's something here with. Oh, it's Courtney Stodden. So this is a 30-year-old who appeared in the NBC News documentary Impact Times Nightline Confessions of a Child Bride, which premieres on Hulu on Thursday. Discussed the treatment she received during Doug Hutchinson in 2011 when she was 16 and 51. Um, and then I don't understand this story entirely because they made it sound like she was actually friends with Christy Teigen on TMZ. Um, I don't. I also don't know this person, but and they're going back and forth with Christy Teigen's rap on her behavior. Weird. So basically, she said that there were a number of celebrities that sent her hateful comments after she gained notoriety. Okay. Well, I don't know what to say about any of that because I dealt with first in person like threats and abuse, and like I don't even like I'm not signed at CAA. I don't do anything with UTA. I don't work for these organizations. I run my own business on the side, and then I also do some of my own work, but that's about it. And I'm literally have worked independently for restaurants and as a consultant and in healthcare. So I'm literally out of the industry as far as like representation or anything. Like I don't do anything with the big agencies. Dinosaurs, what they are as well. So that's really strange. But it sounds like somebody. I mean, I've heard worse, unfortunately. I'm not sure what ABC was trying to do with that story or what the news is, other than to like somehow expose, I guess, Chrissy Teigen. She's had some really weird stories in the past and is very much, yeah, I think she's another Russian FSB person, basically. I don't think she's anyone that particularly cared about anyone, or I certainly would look up to her. You know, I think the important thing to remember is that a lot of people that I'm detailing as far as the FSB in Russia are people that they stole from U.S. citizens, they want them to be trafficked, they don't work, and they tend to steal from other people's lives and stories and then expect to be worshipped somehow, and the rest of us just simply don't want to or even talk to them. Like, even if I see someone who's a celebrity out, I'm not going to recognize them or, you know, engage with them because I don't want a relationship to them, and that's all you can really do. And I have no idea if I'll ever get paid for all the work I did or not because it was over 30 years worth of work. But, you know, what I do know is that a whole lot of organizations are falling apart. So, um, and then I would say, like, Gwen Stefani, I would note on her, you know, to put in context everything I described about her as far as trying to get so close to me and stealing so much, it's important to remember that she worked as a contractor for Booz Allen Hamilton in between her tours and performances. And she was supposed to be married to Gavin Rossdale, but she was pretty clearly living in Washington, D.C. in the 2000s and dating a bunch of other men. So, but then what we saw in the news is that Gavin Rossdale supposedly cheated on her and he's a bad guy. It's like, well, what's she doing living in like Courthouse Plaza and dating all these other dudes and claiming to be single? I mean, she's supposed to be married to Gavin Rossdale and have kids with him. You know, you just have to look at all of that in the context that it is. Because she's definitely been with Randy Travis for real. But, you know, Gavin enlisted as living in Los Angeles, and there's these fake stories coming out even in the Obama years about Michelle Obama hanging out with her. And yet she has this whole other alias she lives under where she dates and lives with other men. And the other guy she was with was definitely not Gavin Rossdale. He figured out, actually told me that she was Gwen Stefani. And I went, oh my gosh, I have to get out of this conversation. This is too much. Because it's just totally weird. So, anyways, So I'm just going to go ahead and I think, we've kind of covered all the topics today. For me, I do still see people from the industry around, and it's important to understand that if you would actually want any kind of work from me, you would have to go through Patreon and pay up front for work. And I'm not interested in discussing anything from the past, and I am not going to do anything about the government's decision to deport all these people. And frankly, the reality is sooner or later they're going to have to go after Kendrick and some of these other people. And the way to do that is to start with taking apart, take apart the gangs that supported JLo, take apart the gangs that supported Taylor Swift, and frankly, anyone and everyone else from the industry who was supported by the Russian FSB, which is, and their wings called at least going trend Nicaragua here in the U.S. It's just how it's going to have to go, and I'm not going to stand in the way of it. I don't think anyone else will either. I'm too busy focusing on what my next, I just finished a contract. What's my next assignment going to be, or where am I going to work, or am I just going to go and work in a restaurant again, or healthcare? I don't know right now. I'm focusing on myself and survival, not that kind of stuff. So, let's do Purple Rain. So I am going to karaoke Purple Rain for you. And, that'll kind of be the show for today. So I don't know if there'll be more live shows. It'll just depend on how everything goes today. I'm not sure which versions of these would be good with karaoke. Uh-oh. My phone's slipping around here. I'm very curious to see what happens with, what's going to happen with this whole P. Diddy trial. Are they actually really just going to go after P. Diddy and not, the rest of these people? Or, because there's some pretty nasty people involved that also need to go down. JLo's one of them. I'm putting it out there so people know who and what to actually go after. Because you can't just go by the names and the aliases they make up, right? You can't just go by the names and the aliases they make up, right? So. Here, let's see if this works. I'm going to karaoke this one. Okay. Here we go. I never meant to cause you any sorrow. I never meant to cause you any pain. I don't want to see you laughing. I only want to see you laughing in the purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. I only want to see you bathing in the purple rain. I never wanted to be your weekend lover. All I want to be is some kind of friend. Yeah. Baby, I could never see you from another. It's such a shame our friendship had to end. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. started changing. It's time we all reach out for something new, and that means you too. You say you want a leader, but you can't seem to make up your mind. I think you better close it and let me guide you through to the purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. If you know what I'm singing about, come on, raise up your hand. Rain, purple rain. I only wanna see you. I only wanna see you in the purple rain. And I just want to let you all know I'm also still in the Maxim cover model competition. I'm advancing, and thank you for voting me this past week. And please continue tuning in. There'll be more episodes coming. I can't promise they'll all be live. I don't know what my schedule is. I don't even know where I'm going to film them next, but please keep tuning in and being a part of the show. And I want to say thank you to Lakeisha Laha as well today. Thank you. And have a good one. Happy Sunday here in the USA.